I have this nice like Blu-ray
Oh, there's
collection.
one
It's
and
got
two.
yeah, 1 and 2. It's got a little book with stuff in
Ooh.
it and personal note from Ivan Reitman in there.
Oh, nice. Director of Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah.
Why did I think of that movie? I
And
like
Stripes.
that movie. Stripes. I've never seen Stripes.
Oh, Stripes, dude.
One to
That's a
look
good
forward
one.
to.
I could do a long walk for drink. Remembers on Stripes even. But no, so like I said earlier, I don't consider myself to be a super fan of this. And I think that is because it was one of 2 movies that I always owned. So it's not that I dislike the movie, it's that I just know it. It just is. I feel like this and Stand By Me are like a part of me just because I watched them so much, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm wearing this Bloodsport shirt, and we all know how much I love JCVD and Bloodsport. But
Yeah.
I think I've probably only actually seen Bloodsport once in the last. I mean, easily decade, maybe quite a bit more. But I saw it so very much that I know it front to back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that my knowledge of Ghostbusters is as thorough as, say, Goonies. But it's one of those like super quotable movies. Like,
yeah.
Which is great. It's one of those movies that as throughout time, as like more and more has trickled out about the behind the scenes of it, that is just fascinating. So like Ernie Hudson's character is man, he doesn't even get a credit. That's so fucking shitty.
Oh, across
like,
the top.
Yeah, it's like Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, and Rick Moranis. Like,
I guess I could see that in that company. And his character does come in this kind of weird way.
So my understanding of that whole situation is originally when this script was written, Eddie Murphy was huge at the time.
Sure, yeah.
And this Ernie Hudson's character was supposed to be the everyday, like the lay person to help communicate some of these high level concepts.
Someone to explain things to. Yeah, come in from the outside to help with the exposition.
Yeah. And was supposed to be a part of it from essentially like the whole time. And that part was dog-eared for Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then as the production started to come on and the rewrites started to happen as they were ramping towards production, Bill Murray kept pushing more and more, like stealing more and more of the time of the movie, and Eddie Murphy backed out. And so because the part had been truncated down to this essentially like token black guy, because as awesome as Ernie Hudson's character is, and I love having him in there, it really feels like that's what he is like a token black guy.
Yeah, he doesn't have much of a strong identity, and he kind of is a part for them in some ways. And like when they go to jail, he's like, I just started working here and all this. Like he's distancing himself.
Yep, absolutely. So that to me, when I heard that story, that was fascinating to me.
Holy shit, I just looked and it was like, so if you look, this came out in 1984. In 1982, you got 48 Hours, 83, Trading Places, 84, Beverly Hills Cop. So it's no wonder Eddie Murphy's like, fuck this. I'm on top of the world.
And he's dealing with the guy who at that point was close to 10 years being done with Saturday Night Live.
Bill Murray,
Yeah, like Bill Murray was done.
Yeah, he wouldn't.
Because he was in the early seasons of Saturday Night Live, right? And so
check out his.
And so I could see Eddie Murphy's has this skyrocketing movie and stand-up career and Saturday Night Live career. Like he's doing all three at the time, like all within those same years. For him to be like, who's this motherfucker think he is? Like, keep stealing my time. I would totally see that happening.
Yeah.
And I have heard from multiple production stories that Bill Murray's a hard person to work with sometimes. So I could see that. And he I think this movie is a great example of how he is in on the joke. Like he acts like he's in on the joke. Like,
yeah.
he has no patience for any of this supernatural shit. Like none what's like the whole time he just acts like it's all ridiculous, and he plays a character with a PhD in parapsychology. Like,
right. Well, it's funny too. You can see where he would have been taken away from the Eddie Murphy sort of angle. That character, like he is the skeptical one. He is the one cracking wise about. So it's hard to know in retrospect, hearing that, how much of it is a result of him just stealing shit, stealing that sort of approach to character dialogue, and how much of it might have been just given to him on Eddie Murphy's leaving.
Right.
But, yeah.
Right.
I have to admit, when I was watching this, I didn't. So this came up because of your pinball acquisition recently, and then also this idea of these 2 VHSs that you had as a kid. And so that was where the grouping comes from. And when we brought it up, I was like, I don't know when the last time I saw Ghostbusters was, and I feel like I don't remember it very well. When I watched it, I was surprised at how familiar it was to me, and I'm not even sure how, to be honest. Like I didn't have that tape. I don't have like specific memories attached to it, but for some reason I do remember an awful lot of the movie, and obviously some of the adult.
I think it's a huge pop culture. You have to remember that too,
right? Yeah,
it was gigantic. It was a gigantic pop culture phenomenon when it happened. I mean, this movie was like huge in the movie theater, and had a number one, like the Who You Gonna Call was like a number one hit, and like so like all of those things all combined together. Like it was, I think that helps make it ingrained in our memory. You know?
Yeah, and the second one came out like a few years later, right? Like Ghostbusters 2 was, I want to say 89. Is that right? I'm looking at 84.
And that was a huge deal too when that came out. It did not perform as well as the first one did.
No? Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I mean, 1989, that's like for a sequel at that time to come out 5 years later.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
But
it was the Quagmire, and then there was supposed to be a third one. They were supposed to do a third one almost instantly after that second one.
Oh, like Back to the Future did 2 and 3 at the same time.
Yeah, and
at that time.
After the like lackluster success, Bill Murray was kind of on the fence, like he didn't want to revisit the franchise again, and so that, of course, throws it into a whole thing, which puts it into this like decades-long quagmire that there's every like 3 to 5 years there would be this rumor of Ghostbusters 3 happening, which ultimately ended up solidifying into the like ill-fated all-female version
the remake,
of Ghostbusters.
Or not remake, reboot, I guess.
Reboot. It's a reboot. And that, I did not mind that. I know I might be alone in like Ghostbusters fans. I didn't mind it. I didn't like all the CGI in it. It was forgettable. I don't think it's as quotable as this original one was, but it didn't detract from the original one existing, that one being there. Like a lot of Ghostbusters fans will say that. They just put out a teaser. There is actually going to be Ghostbusters 3 that takes place in this universe. Like
with Jason Reitman directing.
Jason Reitman is directing, which is awesome, but it's really like he was on a podcast and he's like, I'm taking Ghostbusters back for the fans. And it's like, what is it like? What does that even mean? Like, just why can't they both exist? Like they tried it. The studio tried it. It failed. It flopped. So, who cares? Like the other two are still there, and now we're getting a third one in that universe. So, that's exciting. That teaser looks really. You see the Ecto 1 in the like barn, which is.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, you haven't watched the trailer? Oh, it's super short. There's no spoilers at all, so it's not going to matter that I tell you this. But like, there's like it's a slow crane shot zooming in onto a barn in the middle of like an old rundown barn during a lightning storm, and the crane like goes in through the double doors of the barn, and there's something under a tarp in the barn, and just as the lightning flashes, or there's a gust of wind, and it like the tarp blows up, and at that moment there's a perfect lightning flash, and you see the no ghost symbol on the tail of the Ecto-1, and you see the fins. I mean, it is really like this. It gave me goosebumps the first time I saw it.
That's great.
That's great. So, but it's I just love how quotable it is. I love how, like, yes, Your Honor, it's true. This man has no dick. like that's one of my favorite lines.
Yeah.
At the end when they're fighting Gozer for the first time, and he's like, "She's toast." That was the first, like, Bill Murray coined the term. Like, that's the first time you're toast was used ever. Like, he invented that phrase, "you're toast."
Yeah, I was a little surprised in watching it. Like, so again, like how much I remembered, but at first I found myself like one of the few things I remembered was that opening scene with the shocking, where he's doing the experiment and shocking the guy. And as a kid, I don't think I computed as much that he was like trying to favor, to gain favor with the pretty girl who he was just like not shocking even when she got the wrong answers so that he could go out with her. Like as a kid, I don't think I mean, I vaguely, but not in the same way I'd pick up now to be like, oh, that's super shitty. Like, what an asshole. And so I found myself like mad at him, like, fuck this guy and fuck Bill Murray. This is me like in 5 minutes in. But by like 20 minutes in, I was starting to soften. And then about midway through, I'm like, what is this fucking magic trick that Bill Murray pulls where he is that guy, but everything he's doing is somehow he rides this very interesting line of like being a dick, being in on the joke, and being incredibly endearing, like all at once, to where by the end I was just sort of like baffled by it. I was just like, of course, Bill Murray is Bill Murray. Like now I'm on board.
If you remember when you edit this and we're send me a task to tweet out the theory of Bill Murray. Like that video, because I think that it really that what you just said is that's just what he does. You hate him. He's such an asshole. He like makes Dan Aykroyd like triple mortgage his parents' farm and like only is like writing his research grant to like pick up chicks, and like you're right, like shits on everything they think of doing and all this stuff, and just like rides this perfect line of dick and in on the joke and endearing. That is exactly, that sums it up perfectly. I mean, it's just, I think of it, but if you think of it, that's he plays. One of my soft spots for actors are actors that figured out I can just make money just playing me. Because
like, there's some people who disappear into parts and others that kind of like a Cary Grant or Tom Cruise.
Jack Nicholson plays himself. I feel like Jack Nicholson plays himself. I feel like Bill Murray plays himself. Like if you were to meet Bill Murray in real life, this is what the guy would be like. And if you think of all of his characters, they're all like Groundhog Day. How much do you fucking hate him in Groundhog Day? But by the end, you're just like, God, is it like I totally get what this guy's going through and coming from. And
some actors like they look for or they disappear. I'm not saying it right because I just said it this way, but like some actors take the approach where they have like kind of no personality that they want you to know about, and they disappear into the characters. And other actors take this approach, it seems, where they find themselves in the characters, and those are like kind of your more movie star types, like your
Alec Baldwin, I think, does that.
Yes, they kind of bring themselves.
Rob Lowe,
as opposed to like disappear into it, and I can be really powerful.
One of my favorite performances, and I think that Bill Murray nails that approach. Another 80s movie that he's in that I love, the Christmas Carol story.
Yeah, Scrooged. Yes.
Scrooged. He's so fucking good in Scrooge. It's like that last monologue where he's like,
it.
where he's like breaking down and he's crying and just like, holy shit, is that good? And where the first ghost takes him back, the guy from the lead singer from the New York Dolls is playing the cab driver, and he like takes him back and he sees his mom.
What's his name?
And like
Buster something with the hot guy. I can't remember.
Yeah, but he like Bill Murray starts crying, and it's this like heartbreaking cry. It's not like an actor like he's legitimately crying, and then that guy leans in, he's like, Niagara Falls, and it's just you're just like, oh yeah, Scrooge. I love Scrooged. But back to Ghostbusters.
This is where I feel like has hit in his stride with that whole shtick, if you can call it that, or just sort of realizing what works for him and how he bring himself to these roles.
I mean, this is a vehicle for Bill Murray's type of humor. And if you saw Stripes, you would see that in there.
I want to more and more now. I was realizing that's like right in there with his in that. He did that where the buffalo roam. I remember you had that when
he plays Hunter S. Thompson. That's not as good. He is definitely like acting in that, like he's trying to like pull off like Hunter S. Thompson.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
If you think of like Johnny Depp, who totally nails Hunter S. Thompson in like, Fear and Loathing, he's trying to do Johnny Depp doing Hunter S. Thompson. Which doesn't
but
really
like
come
so
off
many
very
years
well.
before.
So many years before, which chronologically, where the Buffalo Roam takes place after the events of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which is like
well, as I'm looking at this too, like his filmography, in 1980 is Caddyshack, which is a real like affected, he's got that like, Dalai Lama, he's got that whole thing going.
Yep.
But then the next year is Stripes, which I don't know. 2 years later is small role in Tootsie, which I kind of remember. Then Ghostbusters, that's like the first time he really he doesn't have a lot of Buster Poindexter. That's the dude. Hot. That's why I call him. He's the cab driver. But he's not in a lot of things like until Scrooged. And then it's like, what about Bob, Groundhog Day, Mad Dog and Glory, Ed Wood. Oh God. Yeah. Kingpin.
Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah, Bill Murray rocks. But like, it was weird how I was so resistant to him, having not seen him in stuff, and had this sort of. I most readily think of him in that movie Coffee and Cigarettes, that Jim Jarmusch movie. Not a very well like. I only saw it once. I might own it, but I've probably only ever seen it twice. Now, there's this scene in that movie where Bill Murray shows up as Bill Murray, with I don't know anything about hip hop. I can't remember. It's like I'm embarrassed, but like Jizza, RZA, I don't know what the fuck. Like dudes with those names from the Wu-Tang Clan, I guess. They come into a diner. Turns out Bill Murray is like working there, and they're like, "Oh, Bill Murray." They keep saying like, "Hey, Bill Murray, come sit down with us, Bill Murray." And Bill Murray does sit down with him. He's got that white hair, and he's like, I remember he takes this coffee pot. He's like a waiter in this restaurant diner. He takes the coffee pot and drinks out of it like you would a coffee cup. It's hilarious. Yeah. And I was like, that's kind of how I think of him. And then like I think there's someone who has a similar route to work as me on Route 35 that I would see now and again that has this kind of decal on his truck that is Bill Murray, like a two-tone, like it's Bill Murray's face. I've seen that on t-shirts.
I've seen that,
Like this general awareness of, I felt like as a just person growing up that like, I'm pretty sure that by the time he was doing Groundhog Day and stuff in the early 90s, like he should have been gray, but wasn't. Like he was dyeing it. And then one day he was just like, fuck it. And he was just like total white.
Yep.
And that's the one that I've pictured for so long. Anyway, I don't think I've really seen his work in movies in a while. And so I had this weird experience of like taking that journey, as it were, to being like, fuck you. And like, And then being like, oh, Bill Murray.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course he ends up with
And then it
Sigourney Weaver.
reaffirms it, like it reaffirms, and you're just like, yeah, like, yeah, I
Yeah.
get this,
It's like, okay.
I
She's a
think the
dog.
Bill Murray there's one Bill Murray that I just have not got, is all of the like Moonlight Kingdom and
Oh yeah,
he's in
all the Wes Anderson stuff.
all the Wes Andersons. Like, that's a Bill Murray that I need to spend more time with.
Definitely Royal Tenenbaums.
I know that
I
one.
don't even know though. I don't remember him as much in that. That's just my favorite of the Wes Anderson movies.
Steve Zissou is the one that I think that he's like, that's
Oh
the
yeah.
Wes Anderson that they really like Bill Murray in, is that Life Aquatic with Steve
I don't know if
Zissou.
I made it through that one. I remember going to Chicago. I don't know if that's when I was there with Ro. There was one time I went there with Ro, like maybe 2006. This was the first time I went to therapy. I was super bitter and angry about it. I came like out of therapy, just not doing well, and rode with Ro in this like kind of, it was like a muscle car or something. He had this crazy car for a minute. Drove me to Chicago for a weekend with Star, in which I just did not behave well and was just so pissed. I remember it was not good. But part of that, I think we went to this theater where it was an early experience where you could order food and stuff.
Oh, nice.
And it was like a double feature. I feel like it was Tenenbaums and Life Aquatic, and I slept through Life Aquatic.
Awesome.
To this day, I don't think I've seen it. Like, I think I've tried again.
I have not seen it. I've, of course. Oh, you cut out a little bit there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you did too, but I think you're back. Oh, he was in Aloha. Oh my God, what has he been doing? There's this theory, right, that I've heard. I don't know if it's a theory, that he has no agent. He has an answering machine.
Yep.
And you call and leave a message, and sometimes it works out.
And he has missed out on big roles because of it.
Oh, really?
Because of that process. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It would make sense. It's not a very efficient process.
But it doesn't matter to him. That's the other thing too, is it's like, it's not a big, like, this is, I think even the art of acting is one of the jokes he's in on. Like, I feel like he's just like reached this level where it's just like, there's a documentary on Netflix that's called Bill Murray Stories. And it's people telling stories about running into Bill Murray in their everyday life and what that interaction was like.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I don't know. I
realize we just got to talking about Bill Murray as a concept for quite a while.
Exactly, which is what he did to fucking Ghostbusters. He just stole the fucking show. Like,
right, yeah. I mean, it was written by two of the guys in it, right? So it's like written by
Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd,
right? Who are both fantastic in it, of course.
So good. And like, Dan, I love Dan. I think one of the things I love the most in this movie is the smoking. Like, it's just, it's such a, like, it's one of those where they just do the smoking so well. Like, the first time Sigourney Weaver comes into the firehouse, and like Dan Aykroyd he's not leaning into the engine compartment of the Ecto-1. He is laying in the engine compartment of Ecto-1. That's how, like, to show how big of a fucking boat of a car that Cadillac is, right? Like, he's laying in the engine compartment working on something, and she goes strolling by, and he like turns and looks over his shoulder, but he's got this cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and the smoke is just right. And then later when they're going and they're at the hotel, that the Crown Plaza, I think, is the hotel, but they're looking for Slimer, and Dan Aykroyd comes walking around the corner, and he's holding his proton pack, and he's like just strolling, and he's walking around, and he's got the ecto goggles on his forehead, and he turns the corner, and there's just a cigarette hanging in his mouth. And his jaw kind of hangs open.
I do remember.
And the cigarette is like hanging from his lip because it's stuck to his lip. And you're just like, ah. And later in the movie, like, him and Winston are like driving. Like, the guy's name is Winston. Like, come on.
I love that name.
Yeah. Which But I worked with a guy. I worked at a gas station once over a summer, and I worked with a guy who said, keep an eye out. There's only one type of person that buys Winston cigarettes, and it's an old white man with a giant white mustache tinged yellow at the bottom. And that guy wasn't fucking lying. That is exactly every person who bought Winston cigarettes looked like Sam Elliott. Like, looked just like him.
Oh, that's awesome.
Anyways, but there's a scene later on in the movie when Dan Aykroyd and Winston are driving in the Ecto 1, and they're talking about Judgment Day and talking about like the end of days and the Bible and everything. And some of the stuff that I felt like in the original script there might have been more of, because it's such an intimate scene where they're really talking about the implications of what they're dealing with, and
there's some scary shit even in this movie. Like, there's a few moments where like, oh fuck, like where you can tell they're going for something.
Librarian ghost is fucking terrifying.
Exactly.
They come out of the gates. That's the first one you see, but they're both smoking in that scene, and they're like over their cigarettes, and just like. And they're when they're down in the containment area, and Egon is explaining the amount of paranormal activity, and he uses the Twinkie to equate that. Everybody's smoking in that scene, and there's just like Bill Murray comes out at one point where he's talking to Annie Potts, and he's got a cigarette hanging from his mouth, and she's
like magic, by the way.
Oh yeah, she's fantastic in it. It is just such a great movie. But the smoking is one of I remember as watching it this time, thinking like, God, it's no wonder people think smoking's fucking cool, because it's just like it is used so well in this as like as a set dressing to this movie. It's crazy. Like.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
I never would have thought of that.
So,
sorry.
Oh no, I was just looking for the next thing to talk about. But
this was when I was talking about the kind of cultural resonance of Stand By Me. There were that in that case, I felt like I noticed it kind of coming from the movie, whereas with Ghostbusters, I felt like in certain aspects I recognized things that might have suggested or influenced certain ways that the movie manifested. So like famously the great wonderful theme song, it's an 80s movie with the song where you use the title
in the movie. But it's something actually a catchy song that becomes a hit. So
fucking great. But they wanted Huey Lewis's I Want a New Drug and couldn't get the rights. So they basically did this knockoff, and I think successfully sued Huey Lewis did. I could be wrong about that. I'm pretty sure though. But once you know that and you hear that song, you're like, oh, okay. But it works great in the movie. There's another there's a sequence towards the end where it's kind of ramping up this type of end days type of the dead are rising and there's all this paranormal activity that had a very thriller-esque vibe to it.
Yeah.
It had that dun 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 dun, and I was like, oh, it was a great song, like great rendition. But I was like, this is so obviously coming off the massive success of Thriller and the home video thereof that, and there's these zombies, like the cab driver zombie, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing. I mean, like Ivan Reitman and the kind of movies that he was involved in, like, God, looking at his filmography, I was not aware of this, but like he directed Meatballs with Bill Murray, Stripes with Bill Murray, Ghostbusters, and then he goes on all these kind of awesome things. But it reminded me of like your John Landis, who directed the Thriller video and American Werewolf in London and that kind of stuff. So that all seemed like kind of in the mix in this fun way of like that this type of thing that was in the air like at the time in the 80s, like the 50s were or whatever, but also this sort of horror comedy vibe. I don't know. This one, I don't remember Ghostbusters 2 as well, but I do remember this one, or seeing it now, this one seemed a little bit more like going for the horror thing at times more than the comedy. Kind of like the first Lethal Weapon is less of a comedy but they realize that's a real strong suit, so they lean into that in
Yeah,
the future ones. So.
but at the same time too, I mean, it is cast with the main characters are all big comedians.
Yeah, comic actors.
I think they know that they're. I think the comedy is a little more of a forethought than an
Oh
afterthought.
yeah, definitely.
Uh,
Yeah. I think they were trying for both at times, but
yeah,
maybe like the comedy won out.
like we already said, I think it is I definitely see it as a comedy with definite scary moments in it.
Yes. And not as scary as the American Werewolf in London,
Oh no,
which I
that
think is
movie is fucking
similar.
terrifying, and there are
Yeah.
things that I find funny in that I don't think they intended to be funny.
Yeah.
Um, I love his fucking friend who just like
Oh,
keeps
Griffin
rotting.
Dunn.
Yeah. The more
Yeah.
like
Oh, he's great.
God, his friend is like so good in that.
It turns out the bride loves Griffin Dunn for like this Madonna movie he was in, and he's on This Is Us right now, which we're watching. And
Oh wow.
anyway, but we should, maybe someday we'll talk about that. I know you got. I just remembered so I was getting to this one actor in the movie, and I remembered you have the open letter. But is there anything else you want to talk about Ghostbuster wise before we discuss Rick Moranis?
No, I mean, just again that it's I feel like it's one of those that I thought was I'm like, this might be a little tedious to go back to this one. But it's another one of those it's just watchable. You can just watch it and even in the third act when it starts to fall apart, I feel like some of the unless you do a really deep cut and really pay attention to what they're talking about throughout the whole movie, that third act can get really heavy with like Gozer and like why the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man all of a sudden just shows up
Yeah.
and like you have to really pay attention to what they're saying and what they've been talking about throughout the movie for all of that to make sense without you just being like, what the fuck is going on,
Yeah.
and
There's some crazy shit too, like when the ground starts opening up and like people
Yeah.
fall into it, but
and
like,
and then all of a sudden they climb out.
it.
Yeah, and
like
then-
people are not
yeah.
like, oh, this is fucked up. Like people are
Yeah.
dying.
Yeah,
The
and-
vibe, the tone is weird at that.
and they
point.
keep showing like all the different religions are represented, like there, and I think I love how they come back to that we're so diverse, but we're all New York, and the second one does a better job of that. I think they tie because New York. In the first one, I feel like they really were trying to portray New York as another character of the movie. And in the second one, they really, that is one good thing that they do that I remember in the second one, which wasn't a focus for this. I didn't even watch the second one yet. Where part of that with that one is like the slime is reactive to emotions. And so
Oh my God.
they're telling, and it's in New York. And I remember they're in the mayor's office again. And he's like, you want me to go on TV and tell a bunch of New Yorkers to be nice to each other? Being a self-entitled asshole is a given right of being a New Yorker or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, and they really made a good job of like making New York a character on this. But it's got Sigourney Weaver in it. She does a fantastic job. All of the cast does a great job. Annie Potts is awesome.
Oh yeah.
And then in this is one of my favorite Rick Moranis characters.
Yes. Yeah.
Tuttle.
He actually, I mean, we talked a lot about Bill Murray, but like, especially towards the end, like Rick Moranis just stole the show.
He just,
I was surprised at how much I remembered all of it. Like, like it was all so familiar to me in the greatest way. Like he was dynamite. He was the Jerry O'Connell of this thing.
Yeah. He's so good. I love the little joke that every time he walks out of his apartment, he wants to walk out of his apartment to like Dana, like tries to walk, like Sigourney Weaver's character.
Yeah.
She like she's always tiptoeing next to his apartment. And even when he has a raging party going on, he hears her like coming down the hall. But every time he leaves his apartment, he locks himself out. Like I just like, and he's so infatuated with Dana where he's like, maybe you shouldn't leave your TV on. The first time you see him, he's basically, her TV's been on all day and he's like, so you shouldn't leave your TV on so loud. The super had to come up, and so what I did was I tried to climb out on the ledge so I could get in to disconnect the cable. That was his first his first way to solve the problem. And then his follow-up to that was, so I couldn't do it. So what I did was I went into my apartment and turned my TV up real loud. So then the super would think it was, something was wrong with the electric or something like that. And you're just like, oh, that's so endearing. And just like, when he tells the story about like Zorg the Destroyer and like, fuck, it's so good. Like he just like, yes, have some.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Like,
So-
like his
it's so
general
good.
affect is
Yeah.
so hilarious.
So when he's like at the party and you find out it's all his clients, and,
Yeah.
like, so he can do it as a tax write-off. And like, and I used to like, I remember telling somebody about that's how that his character really meant a lot to me as a kid, because he was like, and they're like, what do you mean? Like, he's such a loser in that movie. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, he's like a nerd, and he like has this party that all these people are excited to show up to, and he dances with that really hot, tall blonde and like
Oh yeah.
all that stuff. And I just thought that was so cool.
He was not embarrassed of himself at all. He was
No.
very self-confident.
Yeah,
in this
yeah,
great way.
absolutely. And yeah, just a fantastic fucking character.